Pope Leo XIV wrote a splendid, solemn, and meaningful letter to Cardinal Burke, a true defender of the faith. These words could represent something much bigger, something that can no longer be hidden. Stay until the end. In the heart of the Roman summer, a piece of news began to circulate with the force of thunder in the sacred palaces. Pope Leo XIV wrote personally to Cardinal Raymond Burke to thank him for his 50 years of priesthood and his faithful service to the Church. Not a bureaucratic formula, but a precise gesture full of meaning, which many have already interpreted as a signal of a possible change of season. The letter, written in Latin and signed by the Pope himself, was made public by Burke himself via social media. A document that not only praises the American Cardinal's qualities, but also recognizes him as a zealous servant of canon law and a preacher of the gospel according to the heart of Christ. If you appreciate our outreach service and believe in the values of truth and transparency, please purchase a super thank you. Each piece of content requires commitment, study, and dedication, and our work is entirely self-funded. Your support helps us continue this mission. Thank you so much. After years in which Burke had been marginalized and even threatened with eviction under Francis's pontificate, this solemn message and apostolic blessing, also granted to those close to him, sounds like an implicit rehabilitation and a sign of détente. A significant sign, considering that Burke himself participated in the conclave that elected Leo XIV, with more than one observer speculating that he played a decisive role in that choice. Beyond the news itself, Pope Leo XIV's letter to Raymond Burke contains details that deserve to be highlighted because they clearly demonstrate the significance of the gesture and the subtlety of the words chosen by the pontiff. The document, dated June 17th and signed by hand, is written entirely in Latin and delivered with a solemn formula, as befits great anniversaries. Pope Leo addressed Burke as Venerable Brother and recalled the Golden Jubilee of his ordination, which took place in the Diocese of La Crosse. He thanks the Cardinal for having preached the precepts of the Gospel according to the heart of Christ and for having recounted his treasures with a poetic expression that has struck many observers. The Pope emphasizes Burke's contribution to canon law and his work in the dicasteries of the Holy See, calling it a good service to the universal Church. There is also a final blessing, extended not only to him, but also to those close to him, which many have interpreted as a helping hand also towards the wider traditionalist environment. The letter, published by Burke himself on his social media channels with words of humility, praised be Jesus Christ. I am very honored and humbled to have received this letter from His Holiness, has already become, in the perception of the faithful, more than a simple greeting card. A political and ecclesial signal, pronounced in the language of tradition, but with an eye to a possible new balance within the Church. Yet, to truly understand the meaning of this letter and the climate that made it possible, we need to go back a few weeks to what today appears to be a real background. In the hushed silence of the sacred palaces, Cardinal Raymond Burke had already met with Pope Leo XIV to discuss face-to-face an explosive issue: the future of the traditional Mass. No official statement had accompanied the meeting, but Burke's words, delivered shortly afterward at the Latin Mass Society's 60th anniversary conference in London, had implied much more than the Vatican was willing to admit. There, Burke revealed bluntly that he had already spoken personally to the Pope, asking him to put an end to what he called a persecution against the faithful who recognized themselves in the ancient Roman rite, and to restore full dignity to a liturgical form that, in his opinion, has nourished generations of saints. The Cardinal expressed the wish that Leo XIV would follow the paternal and wise line of Benedict XVI, restoring what had been established by Summorum Pontificum and, if possible, going beyond it. In his speech, he harshly criticized Traditionis Custodes, calling it a severe and revolutionary act, the product of an ideological vision that has nothing to do with pastoral needs and that has sown confusion among bishops and faithful. He did not fail to recall how the restrictions on the ancient Mass have generated suffering among many Catholics, depriving them, he said, of a legitimate and fruitful spiritual treasure. His words, supported by figures such as Cardinals Sarah and Schneider, who publicly called for the abrogation of Traditionis Custodes, shook more than one corridor in the Vatican. Yet, beyond the speculations about Leo XIV's liturgical past, what was truly striking was his willingness to listen, a listening that now seems to have borne its first fruits. As often happens in the history of the Church, it is not official declarations that reveal the true priorities of a pontificate, but the silent gestures that offer glimmers of light. The letters sent to Burke and the background to their meeting have now raised the hopes of many faithful, but have also turned the spotlight on what already appears to be the real test for Pope Leo XIV, the liturgical question. In the sacred palaces, well-informed sources speak of a palpable tension between the different souls of the Curia. On one side, those who would like to shield the reforms introduced by Francis, relegating the ancient Mass to the preserve of a few nostalgics. On the other hand, those like Burke, who ask to mend the rift and give space back to tradition, not out of nostalgia, but out of loyalty to a treasure that has never been abrogated. At stake is not only liturgical peace, but the very credibility of a pontificate that, from day one, many have seen as a providential opportunity to heal wounds and restore unity. How and with whom Leo XIV will decide to act will be seen in the coming months. But the tone of his letter, the attention he paid to Burke, and the blessing he also extended to those close to him suggest that the question of the traditional Mass will not be relegated to a footnote. Everything suggests that this will be the central issue on which this Pope's ability to restore to the Church the peace that others have carelessly compromised will be measured. The next moves, as many suggest, will be decisive not only for him, but for the very soul of the Church. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.